All right, everybody, welcome to ArchaeoX. It is Wednesday night. We do not have Christy here with us. We do have Gary, though, host of Unity Manifest podcast, my former co-host of Everything Imaginable. Gary, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am really good, man. We've done so much podcasting over the years. This is going to be fun tonight.
Yeah, we've done a couple.
You've done a few, right?
Yeah, man.
Should we even do we even want to reminisce about the look, for everyone listening, Gary and I have co-hosted a ton of shows, and we're going to reminisce just to give you an idea of what we're going to do tonight. We have a couple topics to go over. Gary and I have done some
wait. First, before we start, okay?
Oh yeah, we're not starting. We're just giving people an overview.
Yeah, but you know, what do you think?
Oh, okay. I feel like we're getting right into it.
Like about when you hear about like space, UFO retrievals and crashed spacecraft and all that stuff. Okay. Do you think that the original spacecraft or alien UFO retrievals were actually archaeological finds rather than crashed UFOs?
That's exactly the type of question we're going to lead into, because that's exactly a great question for a start. So to give everybody an idea, Gary and I are going to go over some stuff, which includes some really interesting, like not just reminiscing about past guests, but we're going to talk about exactly some of this. So we're going to get into it. We're going to go at it. Hang on for the ride. So here we go. Let's just start with that question. I think the Catholic Church, and I'm bringing it up because I'm thinking about the established Holy Roman Catholic Church establishing a global, a very large empire spanning all the continents. I believe that they systematically not only, for instance, we have the elimination of Mayan papered writings and teachings, and there are other histories around the world, anything that in quotes contradicted the paradigms.
Right.
Wanted to promote. I think there, and I bring it up as an example because we have this historical record that shows, hey, and we have a historical record of the Catholic Church apologizing for doing certain things around the world. I think most indigenous communities can reference the re-education centers and church, the church-sponsored re-education. I think that it would be, I think it's important that we acknowledge that, yes, they've apologized, they've done work on this, but the reality is that I don't think they were just burning things. I think they were collecting. So a lot of people will say, hey, what's the Vatican Library? I don't think it's about, hey, they happenstance or they found some things that they didn't want. I think they absolutely reverse engineered it. I think everyone has throughout time found them, these artifacts and these things over time. But I think this Catholic Church, the Vatican, I do believe without a doubt that they have systematically been responsible for the search and recovery of advanced ancient, we may think they're alien, but advanced ancient artifacts that may be of technical significance. Because they're always in the forefront of establishing what the story is. So of course, if they find something, I think it's a matter of not just destroying it. I think there are zealots that I think it's a matter of, hey, there's technology here that we could use, or Gary, what do you think if it's a trade? What if established, and by the way, it could be Hindus. They're open to Vimmanas and the whole idea of the gods and millions of years of human history. Even though there's different paradigms of different religious teachings that say, hey, I think that there is not just a need to maintain a paradigm, there's also, hey, we're recovering the same technology, whether you're Buddhists or Hindus or wherever around the world. I think that these technological pieces may, for some zealots, be something to destroy and burn like a book. But I think for others who are higher up in a smaller group, they not be collecting this stuff and using it or trading or bartering. What do you think?
That makes perfect sense. That the people who have retrieved this stuff are using it as a form of currency at like a really high global elite level.
Do you ever wonder then if they've used it in tight situations or just to, do you think they've always used it to leverage their established position within I want to carefully construct this portion of the conversation for the sake of sponsors. I think that if we're going to go at this, let's go at it carefully, right? So while we go at it, I think the question, if you can respond with that in mind, I think it's important to cover perhaps if you found a high piece of technology, is there a point where any particular religious contemporary, would there be a reason for one institution to trade it west or east in the world? So would an Eastern philosophy want to give it to a Western? What would you do with a high technology that could change a war, for instance, like take the Nazis, take World War? Would you automatically assume it's like, oh, if it's a piece of ancient technology, it's going to be Indiana Jones into the American, British, the Allies, or was some of this ancient technology, like we think of the saucer technology of the Nazis and Victor Schauberger and the vortex technology, is that really a technology that they reverse engineered on their own, or did they have the hope of did they have the help? For instance, there's a whole book about I think the title of the book was The Nazi Pope. And it wasn't that the Pope it was that what was the role of the Pope during the period of World War II, during the rise of the National Socialist Party, and then during the war, what was the relationship of that? There's a massive seminal book about it, I don't know, it's a lot, like 1,500 pages, and I've not read it, but I would be really curious if that would be a good example for us to extrapolate. Well, what were Eastern philosophies or powerhouses of billions of people believe in these things? What would you do with technology that could turn the course of contemporary power? Would it be relevant, or would it be more relevant to keep it from all of them? What would you do with it, Gary?
Me, I would just make it accessible to everyone, because it doesn't matter.
What would you do it? Would you do it? You wouldn't give the technology you would give it to anyone or everyone, or what do you think?
Everyone. Yeah, it's the right thing to do.
But then what?
Because if you only give it to certain people, then you're giving certain people an edge over other people, and I don't believe that one person should have any leverage over another human being. So if I'm given some high knowledge and I don't want to share it or keep it with myself, or only keep it with a certain group of people, then I'm hiding it from other people that could potentially be using it for good also.
So does that explain Göbekli Tepe being buried? Do you think that the cycle of contemporary powers that be, like over not even, okay, so if we look at modern religion, we can define it. We could argue back to the Sumerians and Anunnaki and all the different world. There's a lot of gods and a lot of perspectives on belief systems that have really been around since Sumeria.
Yeah.
And I reference Sumeria because it's easy for us in the West to go, oh yeah, Sumeria was one of the first cultures, which is not entirely Göbekli Tepe, right? So what do you do now with possibly 30,000, like they're saying Göbekli Tepe, which somehow is out in the ether? They're trying to dial it back, but the carbon testing showed it between 26 and 36,000 years old, give or take. So what do you do with a society that may or may not have the same type of religious systems? So where I'm going is Göbekli Tepe, they keep referencing it looks intentionally buried. Intentionally, it looks intentionally, that somebody at some point in a contemporary power time, I'm wondering if Göbekli Tepe and the surrounding structures were buried to hide its existence specifically for some contemporary power reason.
I think it was buried to preserve it. I think they knew that some kind of calamity was coming, and they buried it because they knew that would be the best way to save it for us to find later on.
Would that be interesting then if Göbekli Tepe had solid state hard drives incorporated in the monolithic pillars? And
the stuff exists.
Right. So we have crystals, we have the pillars themselves look, the animals and the things on them look really complicated and hard to do. But some of the monolithic pillars of the, mind you, everyone, the 5% of Göbekli Tepe that's been dug up, 5%. And that's assuming they understand the whole site, right? It's hundreds of acres.
Yeah, it's connected to other sites.
Right. And a lot of people, Tepe is pot-bellied. It's Turkish, basically. My understanding, it's Arabic or Turkish. It's for a belly, like a pot belly. Mm-hmm. So there are 6 tepes. Yeah. When I wrote my book, there was Neroli, or of course I'm probably slaughtering it, but so there's 6 tepes. Göbekli is just one of them. Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who passed from a cardiac event just a few years ago, his wife is still around, but he has for a long time been the primary researcher at the site. And then, of course, Jimmy from Bright Insight recently just discussed and called that whole World Bank, whatever was going on with the fact that they're now saying, well, the site needs 150 years. And I don't know what more in your face of archaeology is saying. Why on earth would we take a site that proves humanity and its quality of life and civilization is so much more significant, and be able to point back then not just to Göbekli, but the other tepes, the extents of the metropolises that they might be. Right now they're called a temple. A temple thinks, oh, that's like the Parthenon. It's a place you go to, but it's not one building. It's a cityscape, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's the question. Unity Manifest podcast. Who buried it? Someone's managing for you.
Somebody said that it's 100% that it was not buried by humans. That's 100% false. And I said, who buried it? And I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it wasn't humans, then were we looking at Mother Nature from maybe the end of one of the epochs, or extraterrestrial?
Oh, well, so there's the deal. If it's
or some other in between, some kind of thing that happens in between two realities.
Okay. All right. So do you think that we would automatically have a better perspective on this if we would just dig?
Yeah.
I don't want to answer the question with a question, but I think that part of what we're speculating on is easily answerable if we could just point out and say, so-and-so could just write so-and-so a permit and we could just dig.
Mm-hmm.
So especially, and again, no one ever says like, well, there's this back out when it comes to what is the technology involved for digging? What is the need for having, how do you plan out a dig? How do you have people dig? There is this speculative part where we say, okay, well, you need 20 people to do this and 10 people to do that. And before you know it, it's like 100 people. And, they can only work in these months and they can only work for this many, days. And therefore we have, we can only dig what? A 10 by 10 foot hole. We got all these black and white photos of, like just recently watching some of the work that was being done around Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, and they're digging. There's hundreds of people working in squares, and they're all working together to work on bringing the site back. It just seems like Göbekli Tepe with the money that's involved with these multi-billion-dollar endowed institutes that have basically unlimited funds, I wonder if it would behoove us to actually start more directly asking the questions. Could we more collectively and responsibly have a global 50-year plan or 20-year plan, 10-year plan, and have the I don't think we should have a 10-year investigation into what should we prioritize. I think it's more like the house is on fire of our ancient past, and we should start putting it out now. And the way to do that is to start digging, and throwing money and material at it is a good way to start. Or am I jumping the gun?
No, absolutely. That's definitely, a way to find out. The guy said natural earth cycle effects. So,
let me throw that out.
I mean, if it is that, then wouldn't that still make the age maybe older than what we would normally think it is to have that much of it? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the pyramids didn't get buried.
Well, and there's the thing is that it's really hard to bury something that's approximately 455 feet tall. That is kind of hard to bury. Granted, if you're 455 feet tall and you're at sea level, you're buried. For instance, the city off the coast of Cuba that we were just talking to Paul about, Paul Weinswig, the city is 2,400 feet deep, about 1,700 plus meters deep. It's off the coast of Cuba, and there's no way it was above water less than 50, or it could have been less than 50, but probably 50,000 years ago. So you have more than that. You have the city where Krishna was born. Graham Hancock had gone to it in the 90s. And so you have clearly sea level things that would be easily, hey, it sunk, that's why it's 2,000 feet deep. So the pyramid being 455 feet tall isn't really relevant if you're 2,000 feet underwater, except for the fact that it's I don't know what the exact high point is for where it is in Egypt.
He says Egypt was originally buried.
Well, okay. So haven't you and I interviewed Muhammad Ibrahim also?
I've never interviewed him, no.
Okay. So for everyone listening, Gary and I have interviewed so many people.
Michael Cremo, yeah.
Yeah, and we both interviewed him. We've interviewed him together. And so the reason I bring up Muhammad is because he's this brilliant mind that's been doing all this work in Egypt for years and guiding people. And I remember one of my first times I got to speak with him, he's like, Jared, 90% of Egypt is buried. And I'm like, oh yeah, a lot of sand. And he's like, no, you don't understand. The majority of Egypt is buried because it is underground, massive metropolis underground systems. It's not just that it's been buried because of catastrophic sands and winds blowing and abandonment. It's buried because it was built to be underground. And that is fascinating to me. So yeah, the pyramid structures themselves above ground, and the obelisks and the temples that aren't buried. But yes, and there are.
So there was a subterranean civilization.
Yeah, and globally we see this, right? We see massive underground cave systems that look more like they're rock cut. We have what's in Jordan. We have a majority Petra. This all shows an ability of a group of people to cut the hardest stone, the hardest rock, rock that can filter radiation. And so this is megalithic style type work in the sense that it would take the same kind of tools, the same kind of construction abilities. It's not just that they're cutting out large spaces underground. You have, Eric Von Daniken taking Buzz Aldrin down to look at the laser rock cut tunnel systems that are in South and Central America. There is no indication in contemporary times that they were made by Inca or Mayans. So now, Egypt being underground, we don't have any eyes or material science on what were on the surfaces, like the boxes. Everyone talks about how big the boxes are. 60, 80, 120 tons.
So couldn't this just have been a temporary refuge for human beings to hang out in between catalysms, like, during the epochs, like, like say after a comet hit or like the Younger Dryas or something like that, the humans go hide out under a subterranean place for a while, and then when it's over, they come back out.
Right. That's exactly right. I think that they're living through Cremo. Again, Cremo is taking data that everyone should be aware of. All archaeologists, paleoanthropologists, anthropologists, people should be aware of the amount of data that's out there that's showing true human antiquity. The idea of the 200,000-year-old caveman is just a joke, because there is just so much overwhelming physical evidence to show human antiquity, modern anatomically correct humans for millions of years, Homo sapiens sapien. And that means that our eyes are not fully open to, you there's the knowledge filtration, or finding the facts that you want to find and ignoring the rest. But it's clear that we're seeing evidence of advanced human work, which is uncomfortable at best, or at worst, or no, maybe it's worse than that. But all of it does not indicate that the story of humanity as we know it is correct. So one, there's just getting over that. And then there's, okay, we're over it. But then what's, I think, valuable in knowing our true past, which is, how does it connect to our consciousness? How does it connect to our ability to, I don't know, not die in despair and constant amnesia as to our entire purpose on life? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we forgot a couple of things along the way, but we're starting to wake up. I think we're starting to remember and starting to reconnect. When we talk about the ancient civilizations, like one of my favorite topics always has been Atlantis.
Oh yeah,
because I've always believed in the story of Atlantis. I've always kind of thought that it was not just one place, but more of a shipping type of culture. And I think it was all part of, it's connected with the megalithic sites also. I think at one time there was some type of advanced society that existed. Somehow it used these megalithic sites to, I don't know, maybe harvest or pull power out of the earth, or draw it in and communicate it. But one of the key ingredients that we lack is our consciousness.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe that type of technology may have interacted with our consciousness, not just on some mechanical level.
No. And that's why when we look at again, we're now, the big term is biohacking. I'm biohacking and doing stuff about having better cellular systems work within me. What does my positive gene expression look like with my heart follow-up? Because I was dead. For everybody, that was Memorial Day a couple of years ago. I was dead for 45 minutes medically. I died 7 times, and that was 2 years ago. So not something I recommend trying or ever doing again. But in biohacking, the idea is, okay, how do I rejuvenate, Brian Johnson style, Dave Pascoe? How do I, for all the others, there's so many people going into the longevity world now, but I think it's reverse engineering, Wim Hof, Stig Severinsen, the breathing aspect of this, how do we reactivate these Tibetan Tomo, these ideas of heating, cooling, reducing swelling, controlling our heating and cooling, and our organs and our blood flow. We're reverse engineering something that seems to be consciously, intentionally programmed into the system. We're not, I don't think what we describe as, I don't like our technological society. That's because we've handicapped our way back into what I think was a much more integrated, bioengineered society that very much naturally functioned with what we're calling the natural world. So the natural world isn't, unnatural to our technology now is not the technology we had. I think it didn't look so abrasively different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think it looked like. What do you think of Avatar? Because I think that's like too woo woo. It's too. Yeah, I lived in a loincloth in a tree, but I could, screw my tail into a bush and learn.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, human beings, like, we're not what we think we are.
Right.
Like, there's no doubt that. Uh, I don't know. We have some weird interaction with the universe through our consciousness. I mean, it's undeniable, and our ability to heal our bodies, like you were talking about, is undeniable because of the placebo effect.
Right.
All these things are definitely completely real.
Well, like Dispenza, the whole idea of consciously rebuilding our cellular systems.
But do you even need a cellular system is the question. Are you really a cellular system at the quantum level? At our most basic level, we're information.
Okay. But don't you think that at the most basic level, then in order for us to experience the infinity of the universe is to be a finite creature or a finite point? Like there's no reference point. If we are not finite, then everything is there's no, okay. We're always trying to imagine infinity. Can you comprehend infinitely being sad, infinitely being, people can think, I started with sad because there's an immediate reaction. People can think about being sad, but can you imagine being infinitely happy or infinitely all-knowing? If the universe is constantly expanding and what's in it is constantly changing, and the variety of what's in it and what's being created in it is changing. There's all these different layers, and then there's the dimensions or multiverses, however you want to look at it. If you don't have a finite point of, like, if you're thinking of a vase, it has sides. It's stupid. You can think of a vase because it's a vase. But if it has no sides and if it's infinitely everything, there's nothing to comprehend. It doesn't exist. It's just ether. So right. We don't you see do you see some it's not just about perspective. I think the only way to enjoy the infinity of everything is to have a finite limit to you have to have a border to the end of the comprehension of not all things, but many things. I think you need the boundary. You can look past it, but if you don't have the boundary, you can't define it as I
mean, I think that's what 3D reality is. 3D is the containment, it's the containment of space and time. Space and time is the container.
Okay. So you don't think of it as a, okay. Do you think then that the only freedom lies in, do you think you can maintain your individual consciousness in the infinity of things without being an individual?
I think I don't exist.
Yeah, but
I never did exist, and I never will exist.
Would you prefer to?
I'm just a hallucination, dude. You're hallucinating me. If you would stop taking the drugs, you wouldn't be having hallucinations of Gary.
You mean to say, we're sorry, one of the symptoms you're experiencing is hallucinating Gary? Like, what if everyone hallucinated you everywhere?
Yeah, it's just I'm a mass hallucination.
Did they make something about this? Did they? I feel like they made something about this already. About there was a movie about,
if people would stop hallucinating me, the world would be okay.
Literally, there's a movie about hallucinating. Yeah, okay.
It happens sometimes, we fall into these hallucinations.
So what would you say about your brother or your family? Would you say that, would anybody, if they're hallucinating you, do you think they're hallucinating me or everyone else?
Yeah, it's a collective, it's a collective hallucination. We're all hallucinating each other at the same time. I don't know if you've ever heard about the Hindu / Buddhist model of the universe is called Indra's net. And it's this big 3-dimensional net made out of crystals. And each crystal is reflecting light from the other crystal.
No.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. It's just a hallucination.
So after this happens, what do you think happened? Look, we've covered this before. I feel like depending on where you're at, where anyone is at in their life, there's a change in how you would like this to go. So do you have anything about this that says, hey, I think if you don't exist after this, how do you feel about that?
It was nice. Like you, Jared, I have been dead also. And when I was dead, I thoroughly enjoyed not being restricted to experiencing reality through the limited 5 senses and a cheesy little human brain. You know, when you're outside of that and you can experience the whole, it's different, you know, and it's fantastic. Humans are so much, and it shows that we're not really real. We're just part of some dream. Because I will say that when I was dead, it felt way more real than this.
Okay, so this is where I push back and I want to ask, being alive, your whole cellular system takes time to die, much over a lot of time. We discussed that whole DMT release when you're born, and when Christy and I have talked about that. But when
this is a DMT,
right? But that's what I'm saying, is that when you're in the dying state, you're a living entity. You're within this body and this structure. The pushback, again, it's not a doubt of anything. It's just that, do you believe that you got jump started into really the next thing, or is it also a possibility that it felt like the next thing because that's what your body and mind manifested in the current state you're in, that you went somewhere lovely, but that was where your living cellular body system mind took you, because you were not dead. You died, but all your cells are alive. You're not.
I don't know, you know, we have to redefine the word alive. What is alive?
Okay.
You know? Like, consciousness seems to always be alive, even without a body to inhabit.
Okay. So, but again, all your cells are not dead. Some of them, for like your hair, when you're dead, your hair and your nails grow for I think 6 months. It's pretty much,
but they're not really, you know, that's the organism though. You know, we separate from the organism. Yeah, the organism has its own unique microcosmic versions of our consciousness stored within them, just like DNA holds the pattern of who we are.
Okay.
You know, it's a microcosmic version of us that once is unzipped like a zip file, it unfolds, and then boom, here we are, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So I do think that our junk genes are not junk genes, that we have stored lives, not our own even, just that we're storing collective consciousness, that we are part of, we are individually a battery towards, Rex has joined us from Leak Project. So hello, Rex. Hello. Ack. Just a shout out for the hell of it. But again, if our junk genes are actually storage for collective memory, if it's our past lives, if it's stored shared experiences, there's a lot of things that can activate. So here's what I'm thinking about while you were saying, perhaps if our electrical system stopped. So when we say dead, my heart stopped. I was dead 7 times. But the one thing that I've never asked, which now I'm going to ask, is, was my electrical system over? Because they jump-started my heart, but does that mean that my brain had no electrical function? Was it not functioning? Is my You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah.
So again, if electrically there's still currents and there's the charge of whatever that point, whatever zillionths of an ounce is of the human soul that suddenly disappears when someone is really declared dead. So if that's a real, maybe that's real. So is there a quantum level energy field, which again, there's an argument, it's not a theory. There seems to be a lot of proof around the idea of nuclear cold fusion going on at the subcellular level. So how can we, for instance, the duality of this split, the quantum state, the whole idea of two particles or two states being in juxtaposition to each other, completely different, or in two different, or observing and experimenting, changing it. They're all the things about the quantum world. So if we're part of that quantum world and nuclear cold fusion is happening at the subcellular system, and we are really this energetic creature within the ether, maybe we don't need that electrical field. We don't need our heart to beat. We don't need our mind to work. We don't need an electrical field. And at some other measurable quantum level, we exist for a period of time. So my argument, it's not a hey, you're not right about dying and where you go. I'm just suggesting what would we do then with that knowledge? When you go there, when you die, are you dead, or are you entering, like you're saying, it's like, oh, I like being dead, I liked where I went. But again, is it just that you had that extra oomph or energy that was then, like, all the other noise was gone?
So this is kind of like saying, right,
okay.
that I am currently your hallucination of your consciousness. And what we're kind of saying is, does the hallucination that you're having as a result of your consciousness still exist after you die?
Yeah. There we go.
Right? Yep. It's like if I'm hallucinating the whole reality and then I die, then does that reality stop? Or does the reality keep going on, or does it jump into somebody else's?
I think that you're not again, there's the thing is that we're not discernibly aware of our unconscious selves, which was once our conscious selves. What wasn't what our level of awareness, and that's what I'm also say we were much more conscious. I'm not saying consciousness relative to what we don't know now. I'm saying the full width and breadth of what our human mind is actually capable of is so large that I don't think that we're just when we say, oh, I want to be more conscious, it's relative to who we think we are now. I'm saying that if we were fully conscious to what we once were, what we were not conscious to in that state is probably beyond what we consider consciousness now. So I think the whole idea of what we are going to I don't think that what I'm trying to say is that we're not fully aware of when we have these near-death experiences. I don't think we're fully comprehending. I think it's a big leap for us to say, hey, the other side is great or bad because of how I experienced it while I was in that near-death experience, because I don't know how much of that is just our entire quantum electrical system short-circuiting.
Right. Yeah. Like sometimes that's referred to something it's called analytical overlay. When information comes from the spiritual world and through the human, and then has to be translated into something that people can understand through our limited capacity,
right?
Information is lost. Absolutely.
So that's the thing, is that when people are talking about,
so when you're talking about a near-death experience, you're only talking it through this limit. Like even when I talk about mine, I say, like, there's really no actual human way to interpret it or express it. You know, because what we experience here is limited to 5 senses in a tiny little brain.
Right.
You know, when you're actually in a near-death experience, or actually dead or back with some other form of consciousness, it's completely different. And really try to express it is impossible. You know, I mean, I think art is the only thing maybe that comes close to it.
What do you think then? What do you do with the wider breadth of the knowledge of, again, we are more complicated and we're a much more complex creature than what we're experiencing. So I think that what we maybe, so it's a loaded question. I think it's important to be relative to saying, hey, there's something better beyond where I'm at now because of what I've experienced. But I also think there's something to be said about our perception of what that is and how different it would be if we were more aware. So I do think that we can take our experiences, whether it's a death experience or a life experience or a truly magical moment. I think that maybe if we can hold on to the energy levels or displace the noise that's around it, could we dispensa, not just rebuilding a spine, but or general manifest, could we actually manifest our presence more in any given moment? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me like that question, like if you were asking me that, I would say the answer would be definitely yes. We can do whatever we want. We can manifest whatever we want. This reality is completely self-created. We are the I am.
We are the Yahweh.
Absolutely.
All right. For those that don't know, the I am who am. For those that don't know,
I mean, that's all there is, though, is the I
am. It is an interesting answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am who am. If that's how it's directly, you know.
I mean, it's the only answer that makes sense.
Okay, so these are things to ponder. Do you think it's time for you to share? You had something for me that you said you weren't going to share.
I was going to talk about the buried UFO stuff.
Let's hear it.
No, I don't. You know what? I was watching TV last night, and I don't know if anybody watched it. I don't even know if I can say it on the show, but there was a certain show, and they were drilling, and they found a substance where it shouldn't be, and this find proves that there's been advanced civilizations on this planet at least as far back as 50 million years.
Oh, okay. Now this I've not seen. So what are they saying they found that justifies that?
It's a weird type of ceramic, but what's weird about it is it self-heals.
Wait, what?
It's a weird type of ceramic that self-heals.
Where? And did you read this?
No, it was on TV last night, man. I don't know if I can pitch where it's at, on this.
So I read there's a number of I like to keep up on spintronics, which is the study of quantum sciences and quantum computing. Spintronics, there's a lot of crazy material sciences from solid state hard drives to energy creation, basically just solid state machines that are really at the quantum level, fascinating structures. And self-healing ceramics or self-healing bricks or self-healing things have been part of the material science world that I've been watching articles on for at least the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Well, this was found in a place where it could only be 50 million years old.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say to everyone.
Where they drilled it out of 400 feet of earth.
If that technology,
so it proves there was epochs before us.
Right.
It proved that either there was advanced humans or there was extraterrestrials or sort of combination of both. And typically I always strive to do some combination of both.
I should slow down because I'm busy thinking about all the applications and the points of the conversation. How did they know it's self-healed?
Because it did. Like when they looked at it under a microscope, we get these like porous holes in it, and then they would turn the microscope off and then turn it back on, and the holes would be gone.
Okay, so I've had a
it was reacting to the electronic whatever type of microscope they were using.
Okay, so
I don't know much about microscopes.
Well, the lighting from a microscope are different for one. The lens quality is different, obviously, but the ability of the lens to project a light, and maybe it's the ambient light in the room, it could be sunlight, it could be a combination of everything, but what's feeding or allowing the self-replication of that is definitely nanotechnology. And I've been I've been advocating the concept of nanoarchaeology for years now. I can't believe I can say that, but I do think that there is a science. It's been easy for our contemporary. I have to stop, and I have to not say archaeology. I have to start saying something differently, Gary. Like it has been easy for the what would be less offensive, the dinosaurs of standard academia to say some of the absurd. Right now it's oh, this is too cute. All right, ready? Oh, look at that. Is it possible?
It is, but good chance that I'm the one writing it.
Did you really say you're the one writing it?
Yes. That I am. I am the programmer, the architect, the creator, the dreamer.
Neil. Oh, okay, Neil. So if we are written code, well, everybody is a complex. So for the whole point of nanoarchaeology, right, is that not only can we find what has been dusted in the wind, but the idea of self-replicating products, solid state hard drives, the joke about someone's going to walk up to some of the older constructions of the pyramid and be able to plug in a hard drive one of these days.
Wait, somebody just said we're in trouble.
That's Christy. Yeah. For those of you watching, Christy is here with us in spirit.
You guys haven't seen trouble.
Well, you know, aren't we all, isn't that the point of the search and rescue of history? We have always been in trouble.
Yes. Yeah, that's the whole point. Yin and yang.
I mean, we're not, right. But we're in trouble in the sense that I think that it's difficult to make decisions based on what to believe. Or I was just having a conversation actually with someone today about the idea of, if you want to be conscious or manifesting, we were talking to the Dispenza points of, you know, manifesting or consciously going at anything, changing your religious modality, for instance, for a spiritual modality, you're still changing it for a modality. Mm-hmm. And without a reference for it, you're going to end up, you're going to end up like putting the same blinders on with a different modality of a system where you're like, or you're into a new system where you're not the old system, and your relationship to the new system is that you're not in the old system. And so you're still in a system and you're still not grasping the total, not global, but galactic or universal picture of how deep and broad we can perceive or comprehend or repair ourselves or repair humanity. You know, we think of like repairing our spine from a catastrophic injury or coming back from the dead and living in a more cellularly good way. What if we can collectively affect each other positively in reference to anger, poverty, some of the 3D stuff that we're thinking of? Is it possible that collectively, if we were more aware and out of an individual modality, collectively we would have the capacity or bandwidth consciously to actually help us collectively, not just individually. I've always, I guess I'm playing around with that. Is that too vague?
No.
I
would say we are all star children.
So about a self-replicating ceramic, can you please tell me what show that was on?
I'm allowed to say that here?
What do you feel like I skipped right over it? Say it again.
Am I allowed to say that here?
What?
The name of a TV show.
Why not? Wait.
Isn't that free advertising?
Yeah, whatever. Give everybody
it was on Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
But they showed like it's the first episode of the season, and it was the first thing they showed. And they're like 100% certain of it.
You have a self-replicating ceramic.
It's self-healing. That's like replicating. Like they didn't go into like great deal about it, but what it is it is not an element natural. It was created by something, and it was created by something 50 million years ago.
All right, so we don't need to get into the logistics of where it's been, like what layer or how it's been found, or the provenance of it. We can save that. But when I say self-replicating, the reason I'm saying that, folks, is because when something gets damaged, it gets repaired. But what it's doing is it's self-replicating the cellular, the damage, right? It's recreating. So it's just a general term. I don't want to confuse anyone. But if it's repairing a damage and it's maintaining itself, it's a lot like terra preta. There's that Cornell study where they're not changing the crop rotation, and it's been over 20 years, and it never depletes the nutrients. It keeps self-replicating. And that to me is fascinating because it's self-replicating, and it's clearly not been looked into that this is nanotechnology. This is spintronics. This is exactly advanced quantum material science if it's able to repair its surface. And I think that when we have literally, I don't know how many millions of square miles of terra preta, self-replicating, piezoelectric, richest growing soil on Earth, and filtering heavy metals and carbon dioxide, and we're not seeing at the quantum level, we're not understanding how is it self-replicating because we're not looking for it. And I think this is something everyone has to be aware of that is into archaeology, that back in the day, they used to throw away the bones. So they'd find a temple in Greece and they're like, well, why did they think there were titans and giants? And there was that gal who wrote a whole book about the idea that, well, the reason they thought there were titans and giants is because they would find a dinosaur bone, and they didn't understand that there were dinosaurs, but they would find a dinosaur bone. Apparently they never found an intact skeleton, but they would find like a giant femur and go, well, that was the gods. And so apparently in some of these early archaeological efforts, in some of these early temples, they would find bones. And apparently the bones were not obviously of any value they weren't gold chalices. They didn't have to do with the Greeks. So no one considered keeping the bones. And apparently they were tossed, whether they were human or not. A lot of the biological finds, what petrified or otherwise, they were not kept. So the theory was that, hey, the origin of the stories of the ideas of the Titans and the gods was that of the fact that Greeks were early archaeologists. And that would be true about any contemporary group, whether it be the Mayans or the Egyptians. They would easily dig, they're recovering megalithic structures and adapting them themselves. So not only are they maybe finding lost ancient high technology, but they're also finding and running into dinosaur bones. Hence, you have a lot of contemporary culture around it, but that doesn't explain if you have 60 million year old self-replicating ceramics that are clearly in a time zone where dinosaurs were definitely roaming the earth. You have dinotopia all day long.
Yeah.
Is that boring as hell now?
Nah, there's just other people here doing shit, or aliens or something.
Well, right, and I never want to.
And they're probably still around. I think. I don't know.
Not aliens.
Yeah, now I sort of lean towards like some kind of interdimensional beings.
Do you think they get bored then, and they just come to another dimension to play?
I think so because we do it.
All right. Yeah,
don't we? You know, sometimes partake in some of this or some of that to try to experience a different reality.
Do you think then? All right. So this is again just you're equating us to like a game show or Saturday night or a weeknight television sitcom on Earth.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a downer, aren't you?
No, it's fun. It's fantastic. It's amazing to experience the world through the lens of the five senses.
Do you think there's more to it though for the experience in this format?
You mean other than to just have fun?
Well, other than the five senses, do you think that there is a collective sense of
yeah, definitely. Us? Definitely. We have complete access to it.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to kind of want access, I think.
So what about the people do you think there's more people who want or have access to it? Do you think that matters?
Well, I think if you want it, you get it.
Really?
Yeah.
So are you your own permission key? It's not externally reliant?
Yes. It's the age-old story, you know? Like the other night I was watching, or like last week I was watching Pootie Tang. And there's a scene in Pootie Tang.
You're talking about whether or not we should discuss Skinwalker Ranch, and now you're talking about, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
And he's talking to his father, and his father's a cornstalk. And
is this a show you smoked in your mind, or is this an actual show?
No, it's a movie, Pootie Tang, with the Chris Rock movie.
Okay, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. But anyway, the point of it, the conversation that he has with his father, who's dressed up as a cornstalk, is that he already had everything he needed inside of himself.
Enough corn?
They give you whatever you want.
Okay, so we're debating the existential existence of humanity on the idea of conceptualizing Pootie Tang corn.
Yes. If you saw that scene, you would understand.
Unity manifest, everyone.
The deep meaning behind it. In fact, okay. Deep meaning behind the whole movie, really.
Okay.
What happened? Did somebody just text you a complaint?
No, not at all. You're making perfect sense. What do you got coming up on Unity Manifest?
Nothing.
Oh, well, Christy and I. Well, we have our expedition coming up for Belize, and then
see, there's a Pootie Tang. Can you put the comment up?
Okay, so you're
not gonna put the comment up? Can I put the comment up?
What? Which one?
The Pootie Tang comment.
That one?
Yeah.
Lee, you're not helping.
That definitely.
Okay. So this is a thing. Clearly, some people are clearly good with this. Okay. All right. Back on it then. We have self-replicating 60 million-year-old parts. It means very likely that there are other self-replicating advanced human indications around the world. Maybe different organizations have picked it up that are outside of clandestine government organizations, or maybe at some point government organizations have taken it over and have collected these things, or there's an organization that supersedes that globally that manifests or that manages anything that would come of significance that could affect the world powers as we see it, or who's in charge. So currently we're living in a time frame of trying to wake up, or trying to, like you said, 3D. You mentioned 3D, right? So consciously speaking, whether we die or whether we live, and the idea of this being an illusion, not an illusion, whether or not we're living more connected or not, is it possible then? Yeah, it's clearly easy to manifest through this life a comfortable and or slightly uncomfortable existence where we start to finish it. We stand up, we go to work 8 hours a day, we die.
I've manifested some crazy ass shit.
Like?
Shit that I can't even talk about.
Okay. We're going to stay away from that. If you pick something that you can, and and the idea of anything self-replicating, do you think there's do you think any manifestation of a deity?
I got something that's self-replicating.
I was about to say, do you think that you can? I just had a thought I got to get out. Okay. What if any of our contemporary, the idea of like whether it's Anunnaki, whether it's Greek Titans or anything else, what if any of the what if some of our biology was self-replicating to a point where, like the Sumerian King's List,
but our bodies in a way already are self-replicating because we have children, and it keeps the DNA going to some extent, just not in the perfect form because it's always, merging with some other person's DNA.
What if children were never supposed to be new people? What if they were supposed to be our next body that we were supposed to manifest into? What if children were not supposed to be new consciousnesses? What if they were supposed to be the next version of the consciousness we were supposed to consciously jump into?
That would be really strange.
We think it is now.
It's a good idea. It's a really good thought.
You just I
like that one. I really like that idea.
You're making your own replacements.
Yeah. Yeah, man. A world of Garys. Who wouldn't want that? Who would not want a world of me and nothing but me with the same personality, the same good looks, same charm?
It's Gary.
Yeah.
So, okay. So,
host of Unity Manifest podcast.
All right. Who was the last person you had on?
I can't remember. I did do an interview with Daraya Kareem that was absolutely fantastic on the vibration of shapes.
What does that mean? What does that look like? I kind of got an idea, but can you explain that?
Yeah, everything has a vibration. When we look at reality, really all we're seeing is different combinations of waveforms. Light is waveforms, sound is waveforms, everything, smell, it all comes in through waves. So when we look at a shape, that shape is also waveforms. It's also energy. So, and this is sacred geometry is something that's been around and utilized forever, even in the ancient cultures. I mean, most of our megalithic structures are based on some type of sacred geometry, which has a higher vibration.
Do you think that the higher or lower, that's the thing, the assumption is that higher is better. What if lower is, what if it's a combo? What if
it could be? It could be. I just using that term.
Right. But I think a lot of it's due, and I'm just being aware of it right now, is that we frequently say a higher vibration as if their lower vibrations are not relevant. Because some of the indicate for the Great Pyramid, for instance, they've they've detected that the chamber at the lowest point creates an extremely low bass harmonic. Really, really a super low bass harmonic.
Right.
So
it isn't interesting though. It is the shape of the room that creates the harmonic.
right.
So there's like this direct correlation between shape or hollowness or emptiness and vibration. So you have emptiness, you have vibration. It's interesting.
Well, so what else do you have to say about it?
I mean, we talked about how it's, you know, about some of the, you know, the chambers and the pyramid and the healing, you know, different things like maybe like even like feng shui, you know, you're moving furniture around to make it better for energy to move. Also the idea of humans, like we live in these little boxes, you know, we make everything out of straight lines, but when you look out in nature, nothing is created that way. So it's almost like in a weird way we're separate from nature. Just by looking at our own geometry you can see that it's so obvious.
So that's why I wonder, like the detail, like Christy and I were talking about the Corinthian columns and the items that we find. So we were talking about Tartaria, and we're talking about how you can go as far as Mongolia, or you can go as far as Europe to Greece, and you can see pillar structures that are similar. And yes, Greeks used them, and the Mongolians, you know, the Khan Empire. There was certainly similarities or global architectural coincidences, but the reality is that I'm a big fan of discussing synesthesias and the idea that shapes, numbers, colors, smells could be interchanged. So when I say for some people they could see the number 5 and it could look like,
that's because they're all wavelengths.
right. Yeah. So
it all depends on how the receiver interprets them.
Which means then that I wonder if the size of the Corinthian columns, the Corinthian style, so they're fluted, they're fancy at the top, and then there's these diorite columns like at the Temple of Baalbek or the Temple of Jupiter. Is it possible then that as you're looking at those things, you're not just experiencing, you know, colors, but smells? They look almost three-dimensional. They almost look like holographs, like a laser holograph that you see in a crystal. Like what you're experiencing within architecture, within a society that sees or understands vibration and frequencies, when you're biologically programmed to have synesthesia as an active thing within any one person's. For instance, statues, you would be able to look at a color or the shape and the very frequency and harmonics of the shape of a statue in the form that it's in, and or the colors that it's painted in, would all create maybe a taste, color, smell, look in your own body, in your own mind. That's the ability of synesthesias. So that frequency and energy of any particular shape would translate into architecture, would translate into, I think, collective consciousness. And then you would have a very, very different take on what you'd be, even when you walk down a street and imagine a beautiful causeway or walkway between the Great Pyramids or at the Parthenon, you would see something very different in the megalithic world in prehistory.
Right.
Just
absolutely, because really it's all the same thing, you know, like it's all
right.
It's all like you know, like frequency or waves, you know, they're just like information up and down, up and down, up and down, close, far away, you know, and everything that we perceive in nature is some combination of those, and all those things are probably being manifested through one single source, just like shooting a light through a prism, you know.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we relate to the chakra system so well, and it actually isn't an effective system, because that's how things are actually being manifested,
right.
You know, it's right there, you know.
So do you think we understand that system? I mean, maybe that's an obvious question. What don't you think the chakra, the idea, our understanding, our definition or understanding of the chakra system is primitive? I think.
I don't know, because I don't know enough about it to really say. My understanding of it is primitive, because I really haven't worked with it enough to fully, embrace that particular modality.
Right. So we don't quite, again, I think we understand the system in an elementary way. It's not elementary, it's very complicated, but I think our understanding of the way the system works is a lot like the blinky board analogy I've done early on, which was just, we're banging on it and it's giving us one light or another color, or, a yellow light or a red light. And someone walks up and says, why are you banging on the control panel to a 747? And, for 1,000 years or 100 years or 2,000 years or 3,000 years, we've been banging on it. Well, we know we spin around in a circle and we bang on it and we get an orange light. That's the purpose of the holy orange light, or the mystical yellow light. When in reality, it's like we have entirely missed the functionality of that biotechnology or that integrated part of us by not seeing what it really is, because that's just not something we've been able to comprehend or experience in another way. So we've built these modalities of spiritualism around, again, biological advanced technology that we just don't know what to do with.
Yeah. And plus, you got to decalcify the pineal gland,
right?
Open that third eye,
the practical steps, right?
Yeah.
If we don't do those things, if we don't work on ourselves, and that's the point, I think, of our biohacking now, eating right, meditations, like there's all the ways, walking barefoot on the earth. I mean, I think that we feel more energetic, or we feel more engaged with some of what we might describe as 3D things. But I do think that I feel like it's popping a spiritual or esoteric clutch for our consciousness to try all these things a little bit further, a little bit more. It's not just an individual. Yes, collectively and individually, it's a further way to engage. But I think for us to jumpstart this, again, that there's that idea of there's only if there's three, I'm around. And I wonder if in our dissension or our amnesia as it developed further, if there is a collective minimum, maybe it's not three, maybe there's just two, because there's a yin and yang. The yin and yang is two things, right? And you could argue
reality, man.
Right? You think it's like, what about reality?
Duality. Yin and yang is duality.
Right. And some people would argue, well, the duality is more complex because there's shapes, there's two circles. So you say, well, the duality is more than that, but I really think it is a duality. I don't know if it's three. Don't you think it's just two?
I think it's all.
Right. But there's something to the amplification, for instance, of the yin and the yang.
I think like duality in some ways is like our perception of space and time. Somehow space and time creates the illusion of duality. But when you're outside of space and time, the duality doesn't exist. So duality only exists within the confines of space and time.
Okay. So you really don't think duality exists outside of our it's a vehicle for this existence?
I think that duality exists in 3D reality. I think it may somewhat exist in 4D reality, but from what I understand from the 5D reality, it ceases to exist. And that's the model. I would say it's probably accurate one, or closest to accurate that I've heard so far. And it sort of matches my own experiences with trying to explore my own consciousness and awareness.
Okay. Do you think, have you ever, so you've done, for those that don't know, Gary's done remote viewing and you've practiced it and you've worked on it. You've seen it. For everyone who maybe hasn't heard, how do you feel about the reality of remote viewing? Yeah, I'm bringing this in as a point.
The reality of it?
Yeah. Is it real? Is it not real? Is it, what do you think of it?
Of course it's real, but it's real because nothing is real.
Okay. Nothing's real. Everything's real.
No, remote viewing is real and it works. And the reason it works is because nothing is real.
Well, when you say works, can you describe how you did do it? You did it
like you do it through basically a form of meditation by getting your brain into an alpha state. You're given a target, but you don't know what the target is. You have no idea. And somehow your brain comes back with the information telling you what the target is.
Okay.
And the reason we can do that or have that ability is because we don't actually exist.
Okay.
Because we are omnipresent.
Okay. So to explain it to people, the group, you did it not individually, you did it within a group.
Yes.
And why do you think it was within a group? Was there a purpose? Was there a necessity to have a group, and how big of a group, and how much more, or did you see things more clearly? Or,
I mean, having a group of people definitely solidifies that the practice works. And it's not just me, it works for everybody. Everybody has access to it. You know, it's definitely not unique to any individual. You know, which in some ways is humbling, you know, because there's a lot of people out there selling all kinds of spirituality and healing and psychic readings and things like that. But in the end, it's something that we're all capable of.
okay.
And we're capable of it because we're not even really here. We're just like what we're perceiving is an illusion.
So do you think that the group, so collectively, when you're experiencing this, is it more amplified? Is it better to do it in the group, in the size of the group that you're doing it in?
I think the group thing doesn't necessarily make any difference as far as the efficacy of it. I think what it does, though, as far as a training tool, is a verification. And I also think maybe if you're trying to use, get information from a target and you want a way to verify it, you obviously are going to have more than one person do it and see if the information has been replicated. And I apologize for the barking dog.
Oh, well, who let the dogs out? So there we go. Who let that dog out? Well, so the reason what I'm trying to pull into this is that I think if you have, everyone has an individual experience, but you have a group. Can you describe how large of a group you were using to remote view?
It was about 20.
And did it change if that number went up or down? The clarity or the visions or
no, it had nothing to do with collective ability.
Not at all.
No. No. This shit's right there in front of you. People don't see it.
So individually, you can do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, individually, you can do anything.
Okay. So it doesn't. You don't necessarily need a group for a collective.
No.
Remote. You don't need it. But why were you guys doing it in a group then?
It was a class.
Okay. So that was the relevant point. Okay, it wasn't a necessity. Okay, can you tell people quick about one of the weirdest things you remote viewed that freaked you out?
No, none of them freaked me out, man. The weirdest thing you had me remote view is myself.
Right.
And that was really weird. And I don't know, at the time I was going through a divorce, so it was upsetting.
Right, like seeing yourself?
I don't know. I just felt overwhelmed with sadness when I did it. Like I was just overtaken with emotion. I couldn't really get anything else out of that particular target. I didn't know the target was me, but when it came for time for them to tell us what the target was, and you find out the target is yourself, it all made sense of why, I would just be overwhelmed with sadness, because that's what I was at the time.
How long did it take for you to shake that then? Or when you were remote view something, could you stay in that space for a long period of time? Or when you were remote view, are you only there for a few seconds or minutes? Or
it's not even like I was there. For me, it was like receiving information. And once you turn off the channel's off.
Can you turn it back on or no?
Anytime like people put their brain into an alpha state, it's there. Like before you go to sleep at night, and when you wake up in the morning, you're already there.
So then, can you maintain it while you do other things? Can you go do dishes and still maintain a remote view, or no?
I've never tried.
Ooh.
But I guess if you can function with your brain in an alpha state, I don't see why not anybody could. I mean, I like using the blindfold though, so it's also hard to not be able to see and wash the dishes, drop them.
Okay. Does it help with the concentration of it for remote viewing?
Yeah.
All right. Could you see anyone else that was remote viewing with you, like of the group? Could you experience or feel?
Remote viewing is different than astral travel.
So
astral travel is like you go travel in like sort of an astral version of your own body, and you go to other places and see things and other people and stuff like that. That's different. Remote viewing is information gathering.
Okay. All right. Do you still practice, or do you still have an interest in it, or?
I still have an interest in it, but I do other things now to connect to different things.
All right. So of what we're doing officially next, we only have a few minutes to wrap up with everything before I shut everything down and what we're talking about or jump too far. I want to remind everyone, ArcheoX has an expedition to Belize. Sign up for it on the rkeox.com website. I want to thank a couple of we have some new sponsors, CKC Good Food Catering. Thank you so much. They're based out of St. Paul. They do private catering events, and they do tens of thousands of children in schools, which is pretty awesome. And they have become a sponsor of ArcheoX podcast and our work. They're Lightcom, excited to talk about them, and we will get to all that in the future. But for now, thanks everyone, and thank you for those, for those sponsors. But for you, Gary, please, can you tell people what's coming up next on Unity?
I don't have anything planned, right?
Up next will be Christy and Jared on Unity podcast.
Christy and Jared again.
Christy and Jared will be on Unity podcast, making up for some of the other lack of programming. So Gary and I will work out the time for that. But the next podcast, and of course, ArcheoX is on all the podcast catchers. Gary, is there anything else you want to tell everybody about where you're at, or how to find you?
Just check out Unity Manifest podcast and love each other.
That's so sweet.
And love Jared.
Oh, thank you. Let's just not forget about my lovely co-host who's not currently sitting here next to me.
And love Christy.
There you go. Good, Gary.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Maybe Rex.
Hey, Rex. I bet you're not here now for that. Rex Leak Project. We're doing some work over there. Rex is also Rex and Ascent Nutrition. Also, very much that Lance at Ascent Nutrition. Thank you, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks.